Colts swing big in round one. I'm going to give you my thoughts on it on this, a very special edition of the No Horsing Around podcast, draft style. So, ton of talk leading up to the draft. We talked about it. Everybody talked about it. Would the Colts move up from 15? Would they stay pat? Would they trade down? There was a ton of discussion, a ton of it leading up to the draft on what we all thought the Colts might actually do. And lo and behold, kind of comes and goes, and the Colts don't move up. And the more I thought about it going into this, the more I thought to myself that they wouldn't. You just look at last year, right? Like they knew who they wanted. They didn't want to risk, they didn't want to move up for him with Anthony Richardson, and they waited and they just let the board fall to it and they got him, right? So I'm not stunned they didn't move up. The interesting part with this whole thing was as we're sitting there and you're watching the draft unfold and you're seeing all these quarterbacks go, and it went pretty chalk, right? Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Drake May, Marvin Harrison, Joe Alt, Malik Neighbors. I was a little surprised with J.C. Latham. Michael Penix Jr., massive surprise there. Rome Odunze, J.J. McCarthy at 10. Like, all that was really chalk, right? And then Bo Nix gets picked at 12. And you're sitting there at a certain point as a Colts fan going, holy shit. Brock Bowers is still on the board. Quinyon Mitchell's still on the board. Dallas Turner's still on the board, right? And you're looking across this, and then, of course, the freaking Raiders, right? Go 2 years in a row after drafting a tight end high in the second last year, and they take Brock Bowers. I think part of me thinks that was the pick that they were going to make. And then you're sitting there, and the Colts are picking, right? Dallas Turner's on the board. Jared Verse is on the board. Quinyon Mitchell's on the board. Brian Thomas Jr. is on the board. Xavier Worthy's on the board. These are all people that we have talked that on this show we talked about, and across Colts Nation and Colts content that was discussed on who they were going to pick. Quinyon Mitchell was one of the most mocked people to the Colts, right? And what do the Colts do? Well, they take my breath kind of out of me in the moment, and they take Laiatu Latu, the edge from UCLA. And I think it took everyone some time. It took some moment, if you looked across the board, to go, man, huh? I mean, I can tell you personally, I was on a group text with my friends who are some Titans fans, and I said right before the pick, I said, I think it's Dallas Turner. Like, I think they're going to go Dallas Turner or a trade. And then Latu came through. Obviously, after it came through, I take a step back and I breathe deep, right? And I'm like, okay, well, no matter what, he's a Colt. Now I'm going to support whoever that is. And I start kind of trying to process through. And y'all know me, right? Like, you guys have known me for years now. I'm going on 4 years, 3 years of doing this show. Who do you honestly think was my first phone call, was my first reach out to see, like, what should I feel? I immediately texted Zach on what do you think? And I kind of got a, man. And then it was, then Zach, who, if y'all were around last year, the year before, does an amazing job breaking down the draft. Hey, I mean, and I don't think he'd be upset with me saying this. He said he's the best pass rusher in the draft, but the medicals is super scary. That was kind of the thing. He's the best pass rusher in the draft by far, but the medical's freaky. And then, so you kind of keep going through that and you start thinking about it and you start bringing it in. You start realizing that was 3 years ago. He played 2 more years at UCLA on this repaired neck, right? And in those 2 years, all he did was 10.5 sacks and 13 sacks last year, right? I mean, He put 25 more games on his neck. And then you start doing a little bit more digging. You realize the surgeon. I want to give credit, I believe, to Zach Hicks of Horseshoe Huddle of Locked On Colts, who said the surgeon that did his neck surgery is actually the same one that did Peyton Manning's. So you kind of do that digging. I talked to one of my most trusted people, obviously, is Zach. And the first thing he says outside of the medical and the neck is, hey, man, he's the best pass rusher in the entire draft. Um, you look at it and you go, man, I wasn't thinking it. I heard it more and more leading up to tonight that pass rush was a thing. Dallas Turner was supposedly high on their list. That was something that they would look to. And obviously too, the way that the board fell, they picked the first defensive player. So in their mind, they picked the best defensive player in this draft. They got the first crack at defense, and they picked the best defensive player in the draft in their mind. And that's what you have to think, right? Like, you have to think you have gotten your edge. Now you get to put him on one side. And he talked about in his interview afterwards that he's been training with Quiddy. Partially, I'll let the cat out. I think that means Quiddy's not getting his fifth-year option picked up. I mean, obviously, if you're drafting an edge 4 years, almost 4 years later than drafting your edge last time, something in your mind probably didn't work right with Quiddy, right? So let the cat out back. I think there's that, but you're talking putting him in there and trying to let him eat, right? On a line that has Grover Stewart, Roquan Davis, and DeForest Buckner. Also subbing in with Kwity Paye, Samson Ibukam on one side, and Dio Adengbo on there too. I think you have a really, really strong defensive line now. And if the neck is good, and I think George Bremer, friend of the show, even tweeted out and said, in the year that he took off from football, Laiatu Latu was playing rugby, So his neck seems to be okay. The medicals from the combine were through the roof for him. They felt confident. Ballard just said in his press conference, that they did a lot of research and they felt very comfortable about the neck. So if the neck is okay, you may have just hit a home run. You may have just hit a home run with this pick. It's taken every bit of the time. I mean, they picked around 9. My time, it's around 11, 16 for me to do my research a little bit more and come around and be okay with this. But maybe, just maybe the people who do this for a living know more than I do, okay, and that we do. What do y'all think? Are you pissed off that this is the pick, that they didn't go corner, that they didn't go receiver? Which, by the way, A.D. Mitchell, Troy Franklin, Malachi Corley, there's a lot of good receivers that are still on the board going into round 2. I think that's where they're headed. I think that's an absolute thing they're probably going to do at this point. But what do you think? Drop it in the comments. Let me know how you feel about this pick. Are you good with it? Did it take you some time, or are you still, no, horrible pick? I want to hear from you guys. As always, you guys like, share, subscribe, comment, all those great things that we love. And as always, you guys, we'll be back late tomorrow, probably again after the night of draft. And as always, I love you. And I say it, this is the new way we go. Even though he's not sitting talking Colts with me anymore, I know Zach loves you guys too. I'm out.